In this video, we're going to demonstrate the fundamental flaw in all traditional antivirus products, the need for constant interaction with management servers. We'll show how traditional antivirus with out-of-date signatures fails to protect against brand new ransomware. And in contrast, you'll see how an old installation of Cylance Protect destroys this unknown malware rapidly and effectively, all offline and all without updates. In this first test, we're going to focus on Kaspersky, which is an antivirus product that relies very heavily on cloud interactivity for dynamic analysis and also regular signature updates. Notice in the bottom right, we're actually running off database release date 30th of March 2016, so that's 3 weeks ago. So this version of antivirus is 3 weeks old, and we'll see how well it copes with new malware. Now, notice this folder in the bottom right. This isn't being scanned by Kaspersky at the moment, and it's filled with a load of malware that we've downloaded this morning. And what we're going to do is drop that into another folder above it that is not being excluded currently, and see how Kaspersky handles that. We've also got Resource Monitor open here with CPU and memory being shown. And if you notice the avp.exe, that's the Kaspersky process, and that's the one to notice how it handles the background scanning process. So let's copy this malware into the included folder and watch Kaspersky start to use its background detection to statically detect this new ransomware. So we'll now start the stopwatch and see how long it takes for Kaspersky to plow through those 80 pieces of ransomware. Now again, this is using out-of-date signatures on the Kaspersky engine, and you'll notice that engine in the resource monitor. It's making fairly heavy work of the detection. So of the 80 pieces that we originally started with, we've now finished at 3 minutes 45, and it's only been able to detect 31 pieces of malware and remove them. So that means it's left 49 pieces of ransomware still intact on the machine. So the only option now for Kaspersky is to handle those dynamically and scan them as they run. Now clearly the big danger of running malware dynamically, so after you execute it, is you're already in a land of what could happen. So we've actually got some files here, some Word documents, some Excel spreadsheets that will be our sacrificial lambs. So if anything does happen when we run this ransomware, we'll surely know about it by looking at these files in here. So we've still got 49 pieces of ransomware left that we're going to run. And when we do run those, if they do execute, you'll see them on the left here in Process Explorer. Down the bottom left, they'll appear as new processes. So the previous test relied on background analysis. We're now going to run all these executables. So let's select to run all those and start the stopwatch. And you'll see a little pop-up of my executable running script kicking off here. Now it's going to process each executable one by one, and it's looking pretty slow at the moment. And the reason for that is Kaspersky's intercepting each of these start commands one by one and trying to analyze the malware and struggling. So you can see it's after 30 seconds still only run 4 of these executables, but it's starting to process them now. We'll also start to see some errors popping up as the executables are poorly formed, and also Kaspersky detecting correctly some of this malware. And notice on the left, we're starting to see some processes running that we wouldn't expect. So we've got one here, reg.exe, and you can see we're actually trying to disable the UAC controls here. So we've got a piece of malware that's launching the registry editor and trying to disable UAC. Not something you'd expect to see, and clearly the start of a malware infection. And more Kaspersky pop-ups, so detecting more malware as it's starting to run. And on the left, you can see Process Explorer lighting up like a Christmas tree as more malware is executing, but it's failing to be blocked. Notice this one, vssadmin.exe, a piece of malware is trying to delete the shadow copies of all the files, so essentially the backup files within the file system. And also there's a executable here. This is an encryption executable. Now this is something that ransomware runs when it's starting to encrypt the hard disk. So not a good sign at the moment, and looking like Kaspersky is missing this malware and letting it execute. Clearly Kaspersky has missed most of the malware, and from all the activity within Process Explorer on the left, you can see we're definitely now infected. Pay attention to the Office documents in the middle and their modified date. They're probably about to be encrypted with ransomware. Oh, something has shut down Process Explorer too. Okay, notice those files, and there we go. So you can see that the Office documents have now got a modified date of today. They've clearly just been modified, and we've also got some new files that are appearing above. Have a look at the top in the resource monitor. You'll notice that the CPU is maxing out as the battle between the AV and malware continues. It's really killing the performance of the box. If we go back to the documents at the bottom, let's try and open up that Word document. It's running very, very slowly now, and you can see that it's well and truly encrypted. And with the volume shadow copies deleted earlier on, things aren't looking good at all. So that took all of 4.5 minutes to get infected by ransomware. And there's the ransomware note appearing right now. So let's pause here for a moment and summarise what we saw. Our traditional antivirus was out of date by 3 weeks, and when facing 80 pieces of new ransomware, using its background scanning, it missed 60% of them. And when we then executed them all, it maxed out the CPU, and our Office documents were encrypted within 5 minutes. This test shows how useless traditional antivirus becomes when it is not constantly kept up to date on every machine, a challenge that every organisation struggles with. In this second demonstration, we've got an installation of Cylance, also running on a Windows 7 virtual machine. And you can see the Cylance agent there running in the bottom right of the screen. And you can see there that the last updated date is the 14th of March. Now that update was actually a feature release, not an engine update. So the engine update of Cylance would actually be a lot older. But for the sake of this demonstration, let's just show here that nothing has been updated since the 14th of March. So that's 5 weeks ago. So that's even older than the demonstration previously with Kaspersky. So as before, we've got the same 80 pieces of ransomware, each dated this morning at 6:15, and we're going to compare that to Kaspersky before by looking at the resource monitor and looking at the Cylance service as it runs and see how well that performs. So we'll copy all of those 80 pieces of malware into the folder above and let the background detection engine of Cylance pick that up. So the thing to monitor here, have a look in the resource monitor at the top. This will show you what the background impact is of Cylance. It should barely break a sweat as it gradually starts to churn through those malware and not really have any impact on the end user. Notice the CPU graph in the top right, it's just not really going up at all. And the malware is now gone from 80 in that folder all the way down to 0. So that took 5 minutes 36, and that killed all 80 pieces of malware, all statically, with no impact on the CPU at all. There was no execution to run, it was purely static analysis, and it was from engine update from 5 weeks ago. So to make things more interesting, we've got a third test going on here. We've got a brand new virtual machine, again running Cylance, and again with the update from the 14th of March. So it's 5 weeks old and with the same set of malware from this morning that it's never seen before. So we'll run the same test as Kaspersky before, and you can see you've got Process Explorer, so you can see if anything does get to execute. So with that same set of 80 pieces of ransomware that haven't been seen before by this installation, by this 5-week-old update, we're going to copy those into the folder above, and then we're going to execute them. Now I'll actually slow down this portion of the video so you can see it in more detail. So before the background execution starts to pick that malware up, we'll just run that script that we did earlier on to execute them one by one. And remember, this is the one that infected the Kaspersky installation within a few minutes. Now already you can see one by one, as each piece of malware starts to execute, Cylance is killing it. Remember how slow that was earlier on when we saw it? And notice at the bottom, the 80 piece of malware is already down to 50. On the far left, you'll see Process Explorer showing no new processes are kicking off. So clearly, and you can see it in the window there, every single process as it starts is being killed off. So it's all pre-execution, nothing is being allowed to execute at all. So let's summarise what we saw there. Background detection worked flawlessly, detecting all the 80 pieces of ransomware without any impact on the performance of the machine. And when it came to executing all the malware, Cylance detected it all and blocked it before any of it could run, and did it all in 25 seconds, again without any impact on the CPU. The engine on this Cylance installation is months old and was still able to detect brand new ransomware it had never seen before, all without new updates or cloud connectivity and without any interruption to the user. A sad fact is that in every organisation, some antivirus clients will have out-of-date signatures, some by days, some by weeks. It's just how the real world works, with variable connectivity and software issues on the endpoint. But antivirus is your last line of defence, and so it needs to protect against all malware, new and old, and all offline without the need for updating. In this video, you've seen how Cylance protects without relying on the flawed technology of traditional antivirus. If you'd like to find out more about Cylance or have a personal demonstration of the product, please visit our website at cognitionsecure.com/Cylance.